I can't believe, in the search for Nancy Guthrie. A lot of updates in today's episode. First of all, there was a lot of activity outside of Nancy's house today and inside the house. There were homicide detectives, I've confirmed, FBI, and perhaps family, which is something I'm still trying to sort out, that showed up to Nancy's house today. We have drone video, so I'm going to walk you through everything that happened, but it's the most activity I've seen at the house in quite a while. What that might mean in terms of the investigation, I'm going to get into that. It's like super sunny today, by the way. It's probably one of the hotter days since I've been here. Also, the Cajun Navy is here. I interviewed their incident commander, who is kind of frustrated because he says they want to help search, but they don't want to do it without the permission of the sheriff. And he says the sheriff's office just flat out is pretty much ignoring him, is what he told me. So you'll hear from him in this episode. And then finally, I have a former FBI hostage negotiator who I'm talking to about this whole theory that this is a Savannah stalker. This is someone who was obsessed with Savannah Guthrie, who has now taken her mom, and why he believes that could be the case and things that he has seen which makes him think that's the case. Really a fascinating conversation, kind of disturbing, but really, really interesting to hear his theory on the whole thing. So I'm going to get into all of it in this episode of Brian Enton Investigates. Hey guys, all right. It's day 25. I'm outside Nancy Guthrie's house. I'm going to go through the updates with you from today. There's a lot of action outside the house, and I have a lot of video that I want to get to kind of explain to you how it happened in real time. Kind of came out of nowhere, where first there was this white pickup truck that showed up, which I think is the locksmith that we saw last time. But then there were several darkly tinted SUVs that showed up, and you can see this group of what I believe is law enforcement. Some people thought maybe they were prosecutors because they're dressed, you know, they're very dressed fancy, right in front of Nancy's house. They were looking at the doorway, the area where we saw the blood. They were really focused on the front of the house. Then they walked around to the side of the house, a group of them. We had our drone up. They were in the back of the house and on the side of the house. And then there was this other black SUV that showed up. That this was what really interested me. Went into Nancy's garage. They opened the garage, the SUV went in, and then they closed the garage. And you could see some of the people who were here, who I know at least one of them was a Pima County homicide detective, I'm told. They were outside the garage. Then they went inside. They closed the garage, and we weren't able to see who got out of that SUV. That was especially interesting to me just because I haven't seen that happen before. Like, is there someone that they didn't want us to see going into the house? My first thought was maybe a family member that just didn't want to be on camera with all the media outside. We just don't know. But they went in. The group was in the back of the house, as I was saying, near the guest house. You can see them out back. They were walking around the back. They were walking around Nancy's patio, around the backyard. And then we saw the black SUV came out of the garage. They opened the garage. The SUV left. And then the series of SUVs all kind of like sped away pretty quickly, sort of like a convoy of them. But again, I don't know who was in the black SUV that went into the garage. We don't know why they were not wanting us to see who was in that SUV. And when they sped by, I tried to look in the windows, but they were just so tinted that I couldn't see inside. So it was interesting. It was clearly investigators who were out here. The reason that they came out today, we don't know. It's interesting timing, one day after the $1 million reward that Savannah put up. And I haven't seen that many investigators out here at once in quite some time. So it certainly caught my eye. Something else interesting is the United Cajun Navy is here. Their incident commander was out here talking with us today. His name is Josh Gill. And he's from, they're an organization out of Louisiana, I believe. And he says that he came here because he has a group of volunteers that all want to help search, but they want to do it with law enforcement cooperation. They don't want to just do it without getting the blessing from law enforcement and some direction, too, of an area that they would want them to search. But he says the sheriff has been ignoring them, essentially, and he's been trying to get in touch with the sheriff. So, again, his name is Josh Gill. I wanted you to hear my conversation with him.
The tip didn't come through official channels. It wasn't a call to the sheriff's department. It wasn't a tip submitted to the FBI hotline. It came in overnight to a small true crime channel that had been covering Nancy Guthrie's disappearance since the very first week. The message was short, the voice was distorted, and the words were impossible to ignore. "You're all looking in the wrong place. She's not gone, there's a house. It's hidden." Then the line went dead. Within hours, screenshots of the message were everywhere. Reddit threads exploded. Comment sections on every Nancy Guthrie video filled with one phrase, over and over again. The hidden house. Live streams launched. Satellite maps were pulled up. Property records were being cross-referenced by strangers who had never met each other, united by one burning question. What house, where, and who knew about it? Nancy Guthrie had been missing for weeks. An 84-year-old woman, the mother of Today's Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, had vanished from her home in the Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona, in the early hours of February 1st. A masked, armed man had been captured on her doorbell camera. Her pacemaker had gone silent at 2:28 in the morning. Her phone, her wallet, her car, all left behind. Ransom notes demanding cryptocurrency had arrived. 2 deadlines had passed. And still no Nancy. Now, suddenly, someone was claiming she might be alive, in a house that didn't appear on any map the public had seen. If you're new here, hit subscribe right now, because we are covering every twist in this case as it happens. And tonight, this case just took a turn no one saw coming. By morning, the clip had spread far beyond the channel that first received it. The host, a careful, methodical researcher who had spent weeks building a detailed timeline of Nancy's disappearance, released the audio with a clear disclaimer. He could not verify the source. He could not confirm the identity of the caller. But he also said something that made the claim impossible to simply scroll past. The caller had referenced a specific detail. Not just a hidden house. A property off a rural stretch of land beyond what the caller described as the second gate. An area outside of Tucson, dense with old farmhouses, storage barns, and privately held estates set far back from the road, properties shielded by tall trees, long gravel driveways, and the kind of deliberate seclusion that doesn't happen by accident. The detail was too specific to be random. Within hours, online investigators were doing what online investigators do. Satellite images were pulled and zoomed. Property tax records were combed through. Old real estate listings that hadn't been touched in years resurfaced. A handful of addresses began trending, people pointing at structures half obscured by tree cover, asking the same question over and over. Is that it? Sheriff Chris Nanos held a brief statement mid-morning. "We are aware of circulating claims regarding a so-called hidden house," he said. "At this time, there is no verified evidence supporting those claims. We urge the public not to interfere with private property or active investigation areas." His tone was measured, careful, not dismissive. And that careful tone was all the internet needed to keep going. Meanwhile, Tommaso Shini, Nancy's son-in-law, the last known person to see her alive, the man who had faced intense public scrutiny before being publicly cleared, released a short statement through his attorney. "If there is any credible lead suggesting Nancy may be alive, we ask authorities to act swiftly and thoroughly." He said nothing further publicly, but sources close to the family described a private reaction that went deeper than relief at a new lead. Because 2 weeks before Nancy vanished, she had said something unusual, offhand, almost like a joke. She had talked about wanting to disappear, to find somewhere quiet, somewhere off the radar, somewhere no one could reach her. At the time, the people who heard it thought she was venting, stress talking, the kind of thing people say when life feels heavy. Now it felt different. And then the property records surfaced. 3 months before Nancy Guthrie disappeared, a limited liability company had quietly purchased a rural property outside Tucson. The company name meant nothing to most people. It had no website, no social media presence, no public footprint whatsoever. But public filings told a different story. The registered mailing address for that LLC, traced back to a business associate Nancy, had worked closely with years earlier, during a real estate development project that had since become the subject of serious financial disputes. The same project that investigators had quietly flagged earlier in the case. The same financial thread that sources said Nancy had been pulling on in the months before she disappeared. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe not. Local reporters drove out to the suspected property that afternoon. They were stopped by a locked iron gate. A long gravel driveway disappeared into dense tree cover beyond it. No visible structure from the road. Nothing to photograph, nothing to confirm. But a drone, launched from neighboring land, caught something. A structure partially hidden by the canopy, not large, not abandoned, maintained, curtains in the windows, a generator unit visible on the side. And then came the detail that spread faster than anything else that day. Lights. Someone had reportedly seen lights on inside the property the previous night. If someone was in there, who? Authorities neither confirmed nor denied whether the property had been searched during the investigation. When pressed, Sheriff Nanos said only, "Multiple rural properties have been examined during the course of this investigation." Not a yes, not a no. Online theories split into three camps. 1. Nancy had staged her own disappearance and was hiding voluntarily. 2. She was being held there against her will. 3. The hidden house story was a deliberate distraction, planted to draw attention away from the primary suspect still under investigation. As the sun went down, unmarked vehicles were reported traveling slowly down the road near the property. Residents said they heard helicopters in the distance. Law enforcement activity was not officially confirmed. But the case, which had felt frozen for weeks, suddenly felt alive again. Comment below right now. Do you think Nancy was hiding in that house voluntarily? Or was someone hiding her? Because what investigators found inside changes everything. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss part 2. The operation happened before sunrise. Law enforcement had moved quickly. Within 24 hours of the leaked audio, a warrant had been secured for the gated rural property. Tactical officers approached through the tree line rather than the driveway, deliberately avoiding the road. Unmarked vehicles blocked both ends of the gravel path. The operation was designed to be invisible from the road, and it nearly was. The first thing investigators established when they breached the property, it was not abandoned. The house was fully furnished, stocked with food, running water, backup power from the generator unit visible in the drone footage, and active security cameras positioned to cover every approach to the structure, cameras that investigators would later confirm had been remotely monitored. Whoever owned this property had not simply purchased it and walked away. They had built it to be used. Nancy Guthrie was not inside. But what investigators found changed the direction of the entire case. In a desk drawer in the main room, they recovered a folder. Inside, printed emails. A chain of correspondence between Nancy and the business associate connected to the LLC that had purchased the property. The messages revealed something that investigators had suspected but hadn't been able to prove. Nancy had known about the financial misconduct. She had documented it, and in the final emails in the chain, she had threatened to expose it. The associate's response was not conciliatory. It was a warning. Be careful about what battles you choose. That email was dated 6 weeks before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. But it was the second discovery that stopped investigators cold. In the bedroom nightstand, they found a notebook, handwritten. The entries were methodical, precise, and deeply disturbing. They detailed observations, Nancy's daily routines, her regular stops, her gym schedule, the coffee shop she visited on weekday mornings, the times she typically left the house and returned. Whoever wrote those entries had been watching Nancy Guthrie for weeks, quietly, carefully, learning her life with the patience of someone who was planning something. The final entry in the notebook was dated 2 days before Nancy disappeared. Digital forensics delivered the final piece. The property's security system, the active cameras that had been monitoring every approach, had been remotely accessed on the night Nancy vanished. The login was traced to a prepaid device. That same prepaid device was linked to a burner phone that had placed a call to Nancy's home at 10:58 p.m. on January 31st, hours before she was taken. Someone had been watching the house they built, on the same night, at the same time. Authorities now believed the rural property had been intended as a holding location. Whether Nancy had ever been physically brought there remained unclear, but the evidence of planning, surveillance, and financial motive was no longer circumstantial. It was documented, it was dated, and it pointed directly at the business associate connected to the disputed development funds. He was brought in for questioning again. This time, investigators arrived with significantly broader warrants. What followed unraveled fast. Financial records revealed large cash movements, shell company transfers, payments routed through layers of LLCs, funds connected directly to the property upgrades. The reinforced fencing, the upgraded security cameras, the generator. Cell tower data placed the associate's phone near the rural property multiple times in the weeks leading up to Nancy's disappearance. His alibi, which had held up through earlier questioning, began to crack under the weight of the new evidence. And Tommaso Shini, the man who had endured weeks of public suspicion, whose name had trended nationally, whose every statement had been dissected online, was fully and formally cleared. His reputation carried the scars of what had happened to it. That part couldn't be undone. Internal communications later revealed that detectives had raised concerns early in the investigation about tunnel vision, that the early focus on Shini had caused other threads to be deprioritized. Sheriff Nanos later acknowledged, carefully, that the public framing of the case in its early days may have unintentionally narrowed perception. It was not a formal apology, but department policy was quietly updated regarding how persons of interest are publicly identified. The hidden house, it turned out, was not a refuge. It was a contingency plan, one that had been built carefully, surveilled remotely, and ultimately never used. Whether that was because something went wrong in the kidnapper's plan, or because the operation evolved beyond what the property was designed for, investigators were not saying publicly. What they were saying was this: Nancy Guthrie had uncovered financial wrongdoing. She had documented it. She had threatened to expose it. And her disappearance, authorities now believed, was directly tied to silencing that threat. The hidden house wasn't where Nancy was found, but it was where the truth finally began to surface. Back on the ground in the Catalina Foothills, the community surrounding Nancy's home remained on edge. Neighbors described a fear that hadn't lifted, the particular unease of living in a place where something violent had happened, and the full picture still hadn't emerged. Tonight, law enforcement sources confirm the FBI is continuing to staff its tip line around the clock. The reward for information leading to Nancy Guthrie's location, or to the arrest and conviction of anyone involved in her disappearance, stands at $1 million, offered by the Guthrie family, with additional rewards from federal agencies and Crime Stoppers. If you have any information at all, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. The call is anonymous. And closer to home, a Tucson couple who wished to remain anonymous came forward this week with something they found less than a mile from Nancy Guthrie's house. Driving slowly down Campbell Avenue late one night, flashlights sweeping the roadside, they spotted something in the desert brush. 2 black gloves, found within 10 feet of each other. One appeared to have blood on it, a darker discoloration near the wrist, a torn pointer finger. "We found something," the woman told reporters, "and nobody was coming. They called the sheriff's department first. Were told no one could guarantee a response. Called 911 next. Within minutes, investigators were on scene. The couple didn't leave until 2 in the morning. Sheriff Nanos, reached by phone, confirmed investigators had responded, but declined to confirm whether the gloves were being treated as evidence. He couldn't see why they wouldn't be. That is the full story of the hidden house, and what it revealed about who really wanted Nancy Guthrie to disappear. This investigation is not over. Court proceedings are expected to bring even more details into the light, and we will be here when they do. If you made it to the end of this video, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Stories like this move fast, and I want to see how far this one is reaching. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to know Nancy's story. Stay safe, stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.